Joining me today on Coleman On Purpose is none other than my very own mother. She stops by my podcast today to share about her new memoir. We discuss the process of writing this book, but also the people that have encouraged and inspired her to start and finish this incredible project. We got an episode full of special stories and lots of laughs. I'm David J. Coleman, and Chapter Mom begins right now. And welcome to another edition of Coleman On Purpose. I am so excited about this particular episode. Before I introduce my guest today on the show, I want to read a short excerpt from this book called Journey, a story of redemption from the historic housing projects of New York City's Lower East Side. So I'm going to read a short portion of the book very quickly so you can hear this amazing book that the person that's sitting next to me put together. It says, "My accident was already known in God's foreknowledge. This was a divine appointment, with God choosing the right surgeon to perform an utterly over-the-top, precise, and delicate brain surgery with great accuracy and skill, even to the amazement of the more senior neurosurgeons of the practice. I'm convinced that God ordained Dr. Bethwell Rayori to use his advanced neurological and surgical expertise to bring me back from the brink of a brain injury of catastrophic proportions. With the constant support of my two sons, along with my ever-calm, stable prayer intercessor and encouraging husband, I began to recover. The successful surgery led me back onto the road toward finishing this memoir. In the midst of all the trauma I went through, my wonderful Lord and Savior was beside me, leading me sweetly and gently through to victory, even during the challenging and uncertain times after my surgery. To God be the glory for the birth of this memoir." And sitting right next to me is the author of this book, my mother, Antoinette Tony Coleman, who wrote this. I want to welcome you to Coleman On Purpose for the very first time. How are you doing today, Mom?
Hi, David, my son. And it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, David. This will be my first interview, and no better interview than to do with my son. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I appreciate you for coming on. We know that this book has been, or I know that this book has been a long time, coming. And I wanted to just ask you, when you were doing this book, what made you want to write this book or this memoir of your life?
Well, David, that is the great question of the century, so to speak, because this book is my lifetime, and it's really inspired by God. I really never thought I was going to write a book. So many years it's been prophesied that I would write a book, and I never did take the challenge on. But over the last 7 years, I had been writing for a newspaper here in Dayton, and before that, for the last over 20 years, writing newspaper articles, feature stories, entertainment, and that has been my forte. However, a few years ago, my neighbor, who is an author, said that I could do those articles in my sleep, that it was time for a new challenge. And finally, I was hit on face to face with the fact that I thought this might be the time I started really thinking about it. Even my son, Mark, your brother, has mentioned that many times, that I need to really journal the story of my life. And I really did it for the family originally. I didn't expect it to become a book where everyone could get it, and eventually it began to evolve. And I thanked Miss Finney in the book, in the acknowledgments, for I never thought this would come to pass, something of this proportion. So that's how it started.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And about how long did it take you to actually put this book together?
Great question again. And I've said it many times, so I know that off the top of my head. It was 7 years ago.
Okay.
It's been spoken many, many years, like I said, at least over 25 years ago, that I should write a book. And I just kind of laughed and chuckled. But 7 years, I began to take it seriously. And I had a brain injury, as you mentioned. Yeah. And so therefore, that was in 2012. And I wasn't up to starting it in 2012. I started after a little bit, maybe a year later, I started really pecking on the computer. I call it the typewriter. I come from that era, but that's okay. You got to learn somewhere.
Right.
And I could really type, so I'm proud of my typing. I took it since 7th grade, but it's on the computer. I started writing. And to be honest with you, until last evening, when you mentioned a great author who is one of our friends from one of the churches we went to here in Dayton, Ohio, is Vanessa Miller.
Yes.
And she has put out quite a book, I understand. And she's been writing for several years. And she's the one who told me once in the library, I'd always admire her. And I said, to be honest, I make a joke, but it's true. I said, I'm not going to write unless I get a Pulitzer Prize.
Right.
She said, you won't get any prize if you don't start writing. And so I realized this is not a joke. You know, I'm a New Yorker, so New Yorkers go for the big deal. And so we always think big, you know. I mean, Pulitzer Prize, how many people win it? But that's the way we think. She said, Tony, you won't get any prize, again, if you don't start sitting down and putting it on paper. And that's when I after that, I started writing.
That was very good advice that she gave, and like I'm saying, that's a lot of people sometimes like they push us towards something else.
She just laid it on me. She said, "You got to go home and start typing."
That's awesome.
She didn't give me any who, what, where, when, making a big deal. She said, "You just got to start somewhere," and that's how it began.
And a lot of times we probably get stuck in just ways of like just thinking, because we do think advanced sometimes, like we want to go ahead and we want to do the biggest thing, but if we don't take that first step or that first start, we never.
I actually admired her books, and I'm not trying to get to publicize Vanessa, but you know, just to see her doing so well. I understand she was. Her book was a pick by the book club for Good Morning America.
Yes.
I'm like, wow, because I haven't seen her. She moved to North Carolina and haven't seen her in years. And here I am. I wrote a book, but look how long it took.
Right.
But you know, and she, you know, she's remarkable. So I'm still catching up with Vanessa, but at least I wrote a book.
I don't even think it's almost even about catching up, because you said we all go through, I always say this on my podcast, we all go through different times and seasons in our life where things happen to us. Like I said, you were mentioned at the very beginning of this book, what we were talking about with the accident, your brain injury and everything that went on with that process. Like I told people about that on my podcast, like my brain injury, and then it's very years later. You always used to say you would tell my testimony, and then
I surely did. And to pick up on that, David, is that I'm not trying to again mention Vanessa, but I'm just so proud of her, and I'm an edifier and an exhorter, and you know, when I think of her, but it's hard for me to think of my own self.
Yeah.
And even though I've done this, it hasn't really sunk in. So I want to say, if you see this broadcast, Vanessa, I'm so proud of you. You're such a go-getter, and you're doing so great. And I wish you the best, because I haven't talked to you in over 12 years at least. So
this is how my mom has always been. Just mind you, you know, sometimes we're talking about her book journey, and she's always been like that though. And that's the heart. That's where I think that's where I get part of my thing about just over love. But we're here to pour into others, as well as realize the things and the accomplishments that we have also. So this book to me is a wonderful accomplishment that you worked so very hard on. And that's why I said, even through brain injury and the things that you went through, you were able to come into a place of putting together all of your memories and everything that you worked on. So how was the process of writing this book? When you were writing Journey, how was the process, like when you said going to the computer and the different things you were doing, how was the process of putting that together, and even sitting down, even times when you might have gotten tired and stuff like that or not felt like doing it? What kept you kind of going when you were in the process of writing this book?
Let me just say it like this. And again, I give credit to another friend of mine who really helped me a lot, and that was LaDonna Williams. She was inspirational to me in that I had this brain injury, and it seems like I'm going off track, but I'm just letting you know the process. It was a while before I could really get all my words to flow again. And she told me, why don't you talk into the tape recorder? Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, she said, you like to talk? You're sitting here talking for an hour about the book. So why don't you talk into the tape recorder, and then you could type it back, you know? And so I started doing it. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
And I started because it was wearing on me to sit down at the typewriter. And again, I say typewriter, the computer. It was wearing on me to sit there. It was stressful to sit there for long periods of time. But as I began to speak it, it became more joyful. And when I went back, I could just go ahead and type from there, and then thoughts, as you said, would come to my mind. And my long-term memory is remarkable. God gave me, my short-term memory is good, but my long-term memory, people have commented when they read my book, people who are in the book who've known me since I was 12 years old. They said, Tony, I cannot believe. And one was from I was 5 and one was I was 12. They're of my age group, and they cannot believe that I could remember the details of each of those stores and the school and what the names of the people who owned those stores were. Those are real names. I remember vividly a lot of that. Now, you can't remember everything, but a lot of that has been stored up in this memory bank, which people call a computer, and it really is. And I feel I'm blessed how God, it really just flowed. And I say this, my writing is not of my own. It's a gift from God.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that is a gift to know, remember those things, and to be able to pull that out, just like you did in like your humble beginnings section when you went back to the beginning of a lot of your time in New York. Even like I was reading the part where you said you went to the store and it was how they used to give the receipts to the man when you didn't have enough to buy anything, there was no credit cards or anything like that. So it was like, it brought me back to like, even like the way you worded everything in there. It was just
Really?
like, it was like a wording in there that just made you feel like you were walking in that time.
Yeah,
like you were in that
I was
time
definitely, that's a good point. See, there's so much, I would not be able to answer all that David's saying in this interview, but he's right. He's bringing up more things because I was actually able to go. It was just like it was yesterday. I could see the store. I could see the Mr. Cohen in his fruit stand. I could see Murray and Esther in their luncheonette. I could see that little hole in the wall store, the Chinese store. We go on restaurant. We went on Sunday. In other words, it's multicultural, I may add. So there's a Chinese store next to a Jewish store, next to an Italian store, next to a Spanish bodega and a German cleaners. Everything was down there, and I could see it, and it really brought back a lot of good memories. I felt I was close to that, and how we run away, because that is what you come from New York, and so you have the lower income, medium income, middle income, rich, and then you have the filthy rich, okay? So here we are, and I was brought back to my roots, and I'm proud of my roots. It is historic. Yeah. It's very historic. See, I'm a writer, so he's going to have to cut me off.
No, it's fine, because I said those, I've always listened to you, like as growing up, she was always a storyteller. So when you would hear her tell stories, I would laugh, and we would just kick back and laugh, because even the story she put in here, I'm so glad it's in the book, where you just talk about taking a train, like you would go and you would party down in a certain area of New York, and then you would not want to show the people where you live. So you would take a train back to, you would take a train late at night.
I just want to clear that up. Yeah, well, that is very true. He's bringing up, now this isn't fair. We only have about half an hour, but there's a lot about that. But you can ask what you want. You can tell this was not prepared. This is really, this is natural. Yeah. But I was going to say he did. I'm thinking when he mentioned the parties, but there was also the other aspect. The party people didn't really know where I went. Mm. When they left, I was like, bye, and I had to go. Here I'm up on 142nd and St. Nicholas Avenue in the dark, in the middle of the night, walking to the train station to take the A train down to the bus, standing at 8th Avenue when it's pitch dark. You can't do that anymore. Waiting for the 14th Street bus to get down to where I'm on 4th Street at like 4 in the morning, okay? Mm. And so, that was really a trustworthy time, I tell you. And so I got home safe. I'm still here. But then he also what he's really also referring to, if he thinks back at the book, is when I worked for Robert Kennedy campaign. That was a whole new ball game. You're talking about the filthy rich, the people who own everything. I mean, that's Robert Kennedy. And so I was one of the Kennedy girls. And when they dropped me off, I sure didn't have them drop me off where I lived. I had them drop me off about a mile or two away and had to walk home. because I didn't want them to see where I lived. It's really something, that's a whole nother book, but where we, how we ashamed really sometimes of where we come from, because by that time I was older. I was 20 years old. And then that's when the projects where I'm from really started going down. And then there was some furniture in the lobby, mailbox broken, and people just doing things in the elevator they shouldn't do. It was embarrassing. So I surely had them. I said, thank you. And I'd wave goodbye. And then when I saw them leave, then I would go ahead and walk home. That's a shame. So, that's a whole nother subject, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's a lot of that, but that's a lot of life. That's what I believe we all do. We all have a way of coming into a place and then trying to basically escape where we, sometimes where we came from. But that's our rooting. Good. But it's our rooting and grounding a lot of times.
Yes, it is. And I'm so proud. Some of my friends still can't acknowledge where they don't want to remember where they came from. Yeah. But look what's happened. I can tell people today, and this is the root, if anything goes on this interview, is that you can be anything and do anything you want to do. And when this goes back to his first question, as this progressed, this book became that young ladies, young men, whoever, old, young, male, female, that you can become anything and at any age that you want to, if that's really your calling. And this book is to let people know, and where you're from, it doesn't hinder you when that's really what you're supposed to do. It's a great thing to be an overcomer, and that's what I believe happened to me.
Now, you also touch on in this book about a lot of things where we start to get toward the end of the book where we're talking about a lot of family. You've included a lot of things about family. Why was that so important to your memoir? Why is family such an important factor of this book? Like you said, you're originally writing it for your family, but why? What were your reasons in wanting to put family into the book?
My editor really, after I thought about it, I said, I really don't want to put, I had saved that for last. I saved that for last because they're still alive, many of them. Yeah. My parents aren't still here. My brother's still here, and he knows all the facts and figures. Yeah. And I was like, I have to really be accurate. Right. So I saved that for last. So you said about family. And at first, it wasn't my idea. They wanted me to write the book, but I wasn't really planning to include a lot of them. Right. See, he's blowing me away right now. But to be honest with you, I didn't plan to write that chapter. Yeah. You see what I mean? I wasn't planning on writing about my family at all. She said, don't you want to put about your sons? She said, you're leaving a whole space out of here. And so she wouldn't let me leave any stone unturned. So I had a good editor. That took me a long time to write because I was living that for real. And you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I was pretty, delicately honest about things about my brother having been on drugs, and that was I'm much older than him, though I was 10 years older. So I was gone when he was 10. So he was left to deal with a lot of that on his own, and he passed away at 39, as I put in the book. And he got off and on, and so it makes me realize, again, here I am. I'm living in the projects. My brother was on drugs, and all the things that I never really talked about. Right. And so many people, it's not good to hide those things. It's part of life so that people can know that they're not the only ones. You can encourage them. So I hope it's helping someone to know that they can be encouraged. And I was ashamed. I was ashamed of where I lived. I was ashamed that my brother had been on drugs. We very rarely talked about him too much. We like to talk about the success of everything. Well, everything is not a success. Everything is not what you call success. Right. And so I wish that I could, and I will tell you this, be there for those people. Don't run from them because they need you. I regret that I didn't spend more time talking because he was searching. But I didn't know the Lord either till later. And that, he, you know what I'm saying? So if you know the Lord, don't run from that. Because that will stay with you. God, you're still going to go to heaven, but you'll live with the fact that you didn't give your all to that person who really needed you.
Wow,
And
that's
you can
deep.
give them the direction.
But that's a deep part that and I was just getting ready to ask you about that because I love the way that at the end of your chapters, you draw everything back to your relationship with God and the Lord. That's very important. Like people know on here, I'll start talking on this podcast and then I start getting into like God. And I'm like, I wasn't trying to come here to preach or anything like that. I was just trying to encourage people to go for their purpose and believe in themselves, like exactly what this book is about. You just drawing it back to God being the center of this book. Even when we were coming, I remember when we sat down and we were coming up with the title, we were trying to
Oh,
find
that
out.
was good
Brainstorming titles.
Somebody suggested that. I'm like, brainstorm? No, you need to brainstorm.
Yeah.
And everybody, and I put pretty much what everybody had is this long title.
But it's a wonderful title. So that like with you drawing everything back, what are some important things like with you bringing the Lord back into it, even you moving away from here and then finding God, and you tell me those stories, that's not even in all here. We didn't have all the things about when you got saved or all of those things.
I missed that. And I would like to say a little bit about that.
Go ahead.
I basically got saved in Jamaica, West Indies in 1979. And little did I know I was saved, but I was at my wit's end. I cannot believe that I left that story out. But this was not a biography. It's a memoir. So memoirs, you do a lot of little short stories, vignettes. And my neighbor again, Mrs. Finney, was the one who told me, we don't want to do a biography because you'll never get done. You'll be there forever. This already took a long time. Mm-hmm. She said, this way you don't have to be chronological.
Right.
You can just do little short story snippets. And that's what this is, just to encourage people. But I did get saved without knowing I was saved. But I was there and I was searching and I really saw Gideon's Bible. I had arrived in Jamaica. I was really at my wit's end. This is a short story. This is an extra for you that's not in the book. But I went to Jamaica all by myself. My grandmother, who was, as I mentioned, was a very wealthy woman. She owned her own store, and she had given me a couple of $1,000s. I thought that was a lot of money back in 1979, and it probably was cash money. So I decided to go to Jamaica. There were no computers then, but I went to the library, and I went and looked at videos on Jamaica, and a friend of mine said, you need to go visit some of the Caribbean. So I took her up on it, but I went all by myself. And when I got to Jamaica, I was very forlorn because things weren't working out. I was divorced also, and it wasn't a good time. I was searching, and I needed someone to come to my rescue, which of course we know now that it was Jesus Christ. But as I entered Jamaica with no one to meet me, I went to my hotel that I picked out from photos, and I saw the video of it, and I thought that would be good. I picked everything out, the hard way that people, I didn't have a travel agent or anything. And when I got to the hotel, I was exhausted, drained. And before I laid on the bed, I pulled out the Gideon's Bible and said, for whatever you're going through, they had that particular section. And it said in Peter, I will bring you out of the darkness into the light. And I went to sleep till late, like about 8 o'clock at night. I got there in the afternoon, a deep sleep I went into. And when I woke up, I went out to eat. But the next morning, it was different. And it looked like a veil had come off of my eyes. Wow. And the trees were green. I could see the sky was blue. It's like a veil. I could see clearly. And I don't know what that has to do. That's one of the stories that I left out. But that's when I knew something had happened. I didn't know it was saved until I came back to St. Louis. I was in St. Louis at the time, and a girl was there as a temporary, and I started crying at lunch. She said, you want to have lunch? I said, sure. And I said, I need to go back to Jamaica because that's where I was happy. And she said, and this is a quick one, she said, you know what? It's not Jamaica. It's Jesus. And she said it loud. She said, you need Jesus. And she was from Cincinnati, Ohio. And she hung around with me for 3 weeks and did everything I wanted to do. And one day she said, would you like to go to church? Now, what are you going to do? So that night before church, I got very sick Saturday night, very sick. And I was like a flu. And I said, I cannot come. And she said, listen, if I make you eggs, bacon, whatever, you'll feel better, juice. And if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. And she took me to church, August of 1979. And I went on and got saved. And here we are in 2024. I went on and got saved to the bone.
and then met my dad, and then had me, and then all that. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
no,
I met his dad at church camp, but that was the beginning of the rest of my life. And I was 33 at the time, and that's very significant with Christ, 33. But I tell you, that was left out, but that's a bonus for you, because really this book is really, it wouldn't have been good without the Lord anyway. It would have been no book without Jesus, because then he gets the glory, not me. And that's really why I wrote the book, just to encourage people. And I hope that this doesn't make anybody feel bad, but I've often said, and I'm not trying to put myself down, but I would say who I really love dearly as a woman I look up to, which is Condoleezza Rice. I would always say, I'm not no Condoleezza Rice. Who cares about what I do? But everybody said, you are you, and whatever you went through is your story, and be proud of it. I wasn't the Secretary of Defense or anything like that, or whatever title Condoleezza was at the time. I was a secretary, but that's my story. So I pray again that who's ever listening could know whatever job you're at, your dreams also, or whatever it is, can come true with Jesus.
So I try to express to people the importance of your story. And that's kind of why I did this at the beginning. I did the same thing with my podcast. I was like, I don't really want to, who's going to want to know about all that? I've had things happen to me, but I was like, but everybody has something happen to you. But you don't know that one story or that one particular thing about your life may talk to somebody or speak to somebody, really, really encourage them to keep going, or to be the bridge to the next person getting. So it's like a fire. I explain it like a fire now. I keep saying it on everything. It just spreads. It just spreads. You started little sparks. That lady started a spark in you that day in St. Louis. You went and started sparking up the world, because I know everybody that talks to my mom, she doesn't know it and she don't listen to me when I say it, but everybody that she comes into contact with always talks about how genuine, how nice, different things that come along with her that people will just always remember. It's just who she is, and that's truly genuinely through and through. And like I said, she may have not been like that all the time, like back in New York, but God helped her to become what we're seeing.
Pretty much was like this.
Were you always like this?
Just a little wilder.
Okay, see, but that's not the same as that.
I was always like this, but God has calmed me down.
Right, but it's good. But is there the last question I had was, is there anything you want to say to encourage people that have goals and dreams of maybe writing a book, maybe doing an album, doing something, just lifelong goals, just like this book? Like you said, this was something that when you did it, you felt like it was like, I did it. I wrote this book. Now what's next? But right now there might be somebody that's trying to get to this step of doing it. Just like you said, Miss Miller told you about those things, or her name is Pierce now, I think. Yes. But it's like there are these things. So what would you say to somebody that's trying to get to that place of fulfilling their lifelong goal, or something that they really want to do? What are the steps, or what do they need to do? What would you say?
So David, can I just say one thing? I just want to give a shout out to the young lady who did witness to me, which was Skyler Whitfield from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I haven't talked to her, gosh, only knows, maybe.
So Skyler, if you're out there, my mom is thanking you
for bringing me, telling me about Jesus, the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Thank you.
You were the spark. Spark.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You were the fire, and you were fiery. And thank you so much.
Look at that. That touches something inside of me, because that's even before I was born. That was happening. That she was a part of me. It's so important that we need to know that we are the little pieces. That's why I talk about purpose and being where you're supposed to be. Is so important.
And my son is a researcher, so he looked you up. He saw you on Facebook, and he said, "Is this her?" I said, "That is truly her, and you're just a beautiful person." I just want to say that, Skyler. Thank you.
So what would you say to anybody else that is trying
to write this book? Yeah. Again, I would get back to Vanessa Miller Pierce, and she said, giving her all credit. I love to give credit to whom credit's due. You just start writing. Just start writing down. You say ABC, okay. Well, I did take journalism class, which gave me confidence, and that was in high school. I think I put a little chapter in there about that. So it's not like I'm not learned. I did get a degree in communications, but the gift was always there from a child. So what we were taught, first of all, you have to just dream, and you just write but the practical stage is the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. But as you write, it'll all be in there when you tell your story. Just put as many details and as many action words as you can. But just write your story. Just start writing. It doesn't matter. Somebody's going to read it. Just write it. That's all. It's real simple. The thing is, people are looking for this big thing to happen. But most people who are great, they have PhDs. And they've told me, Tony, I don't want to sit down. It's time consuming. And I won't name names there. But different people, pastors and stuff, said, I haven't even written a book yet because I don't want to sit down. I'm too busy. I want to keep moving. It's sacrificial, though. So remember, but it's fun if it's something you really enjoy writing about. Write about something you love, what you like, whether it's your hobbies. I liked the things that I got to do, the entertainers I got to interview, the places I've seen, the places I visited, and it'll make you want to write about. Before you know, you'll have something written. And my book is long. I'm like, what? 280 pages. I said, this is crazy. I had 30
pictures in there,
and
too,
I had
some
38
beautiful
30.
pictures.
The insert is 38 pages.
Yes.
But barring that, you knock 30. It was 240 something written pages. That's unbelievable. Because we were trying to keep it at 200. So just write. Just write to your heart's content and get an editor. Give it to the editor and let her do a job.
That's beautiful. I want to thank my mom so much for just joining me. Make sure you go and pick up Journey. If you see this, it's Journey by my mother. I'll let you hold your book.
Thank you so much.
Journey. It's available on Amazon. You can order it on Amazon. It is also available to order on Kindle. All you need to do is go to Amazon and type in Journey, and you can just type in Tony Coleman, Toni Coleman. It'll pop right up, and you can order it from there, or you can get the Kindle version if you just like to have it on the go. I've had people that have sent me stuff back already, pictures of them ordering it. Thank you so much for supporting my mom in this endeavor. I really, really, really do appreciate it. And I want to thank my mom so much for just coming out here and really just talking about her book. I really, really thank you for doing this. This is very special. Make sure you follow me. I am David Coleman on Instagram. You can follow me at DeluxeDave, DeluxeDave. I'm also on TikTok. You can follow me there at davidj.coleman. You can also follow me at Coleman On Purpose. That is on Instagram and it's on TikTok as well. You can follow me there as well. And I have updates about her book. I have updates about what I am doing as well. Make sure you keep on doing what you do, trying to achieve what you can achieve. And remember what I always say at the end of every single podcast: you are unique, you are loved, and you are created for greatness. I'm going to end this podcast differently than I've done with some of my past, and I'm going to give my mom a hug. I love you, mama.
Thank you. And David, it's Antoinette Toni Coleman.
Yes, make sure. Yes.
And it's Journey, the story of redemption.
Antoinette
Exactly.
Coleman. All right, we love you. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye. That's it, mama.
Now let me see this thing. David, I got all of, but that's God. See.